City life got you down, kiddies. Looking for a home on Derange? Well, look no further, because I've got exactly what you want. It's a charming tomb with a view. Think of it as your own little house on the scary. You're not interested? What's the matter? Afraid you can't get a morgue edge? Oh well, that's exactly how the woman in tonight's tortured tale feels. She's upset because there's a killer loose in her neighborhood. In a putrid property I call Maniac at Large.
With the paper, old man? Thought so. Hey, check this out. Another stiff in the park. Hey, cool.
Grady? What's going on here? You're defacing public property. Rub that out right now.
No.
What was that?
No eraser.
How dare you behave in here like you do in school? Grady, escort these boys out of the library. They may return when they're ready to act like civilized youngsters.
Yeah, Grady, take us out.
Margaret, would you please attend to that?
outside now.
What a sad life.
Yeah, dangerous. With that killer walking around the streets. I tried to get Mrs. Pritchard to let the street people stay in here until they get that guy. You know how far that got.
You don't like Mrs. Pritchard much, do you?
I don't care for the way she treats people. She's always bossing everybody around, acting so damn high and mighty.
She is a little abrupt.
Yeah, well, you only been here 2 weeks. You know, it does get worse. I mean, you really don't want to work late tonight, now, do you? I mean, considering what's been going down in the neighborhood.
Wait, work tonight? No, Mrs. Pritchard didn't say anything about that to me.
You see, she's already got authorization for overtime for both of us. I heard her on the phone.
Chat. You two are as bad as the children. Margaret, could I see you for a moment in my office? I have to look at that mural each morning to remind myself that I work in a library, not a sewer. You should have seen Park Lane 20 years ago. People used to dress up to come in here. Now, we have to hire security guards to protect the books from the people. You really shouldn't distract Brady, dear. He has a somewhat limited attention span as it is. Your encouraging his companionship doesn't help matters.
Well, I wasn't encouraging him. We were just talking about working late tonight. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it must have slipped my mind. Well, I need you to help me with the inventory for the city book sale this weekend. Is there someone you need to call? You never mentioned your family. Do you need to call them?
No. I mean, that's all right. I'll stay.
Oh, well, good. I'll order in sandwiches. We can have a picnic. Oh, and Margaret, do try to keep your voice down. Library matters don't come naturally to all of us. Just remember, if you want to talk, you're welcome to come in here and talk. But out there, there must be little mice. Brady, didn't I ask you to reset the timer lights? It's dark out.
I'm getting to it.
Can this be checked out? There's no card in it.
Reference books are for library use only. Would you give that one to me? Thank you.
It's a shame, really. Such a fascinating book. If the police were to read it, they might understand what kind of man their serial killer is. Well, that's what they think he is. A serial killer. But he's not. No, serial killers are hunters looking for a particular kind of victim. Not our killer. His victims have got nothing in common, apart from the fact they're all men. That's pure coincidence, really. I have a theory about his next victim. Interesting. You ought to be. Because the next one's going to be a woman. I mean, what sets him off? That's what I keep thinking about. Well, it could be the city that does it. You know, living in such close quarters to so many strangers, people you hate, all of them wanting to hurt you before you hurt them. We're like rabbits in a warren. They panic when they're frightened. They get all frenzied. And you know what they do then? They eat each other.
I can't talk now.
Oh, I quite understand.
Why did you bring that man into the employees-only area?
I didn't.
Would you please take these down to the basement?
Grady! There's a man in the basement with a knife.
Where?
Over there.
You found my stash. Hey, now don't worry. Ain't nobody down here now. Except us.
I think that's all I'll be needing, Mrs. Griffin.
Oh,
There's nothing wrong. Margaret, this is our new clerk. She wasn't here at the time of the thefts.
theft?
5 typewriters. That's what Lieutenant Jameson is here about. Is there something wrong, dear?
I saw a man in the basement. It was horrible. He had a knife. He had this big knife.
Excuse me, is that the knife? May I sling that, please?
The knife?
Yes.
Oh, no. A gang boy left this.
I see. So you're saying that there was another knife?
Yes, in the basement. I saw this man, but when Grady went down, he was gone.
Are you quite sure about what you saw?
Do you think I'm making this up?
Well, of course not. Why would I think that?
I did not imagine this. I saw someone in the basement.
Well, here's your victim.
You don't mean he was ripping a book?
Those hooligans.
Now, listen, I could pick him up on vandalism charges, but I don't think it's going to stick.
No, those boys were gone before you sent me down here, Mrs. Pritchard. It must have been someone else. It could have been that killer.
It's kids, ma'am. Trust me.
It could have been that killer.
Thank you for stopping by, Lieutenant Jameson.
Absolutely. No problem. Now, listen, if you have any more trouble, I want you to call me. Okay?
Thank you.
And you too, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. You have a good night.
Yes. What a nice man. There, you see? There's nothing to worry about.
Mrs. Pritchard, there's one more problem. Now, I don't want to get Grady into trouble or anything, but he has been drinking. And it just seems to me with everything that's been happening in the past few days that we ought to have a real security officer.
I have tried to replace Grady, but he is a civil servant. It's almost impossible. So, I've pretty much decided to deal with him in another way. Oh, goodness. Look at the time.
But what are we going to do? I mean, we need protection.
You are overreacting, dear. The serial killer business sells a lot of newspapers.
Aren't you afraid?
I think that everybody in this world gets what he or she deserves. If you put out fear and negativity, that's what comes back to call on you. The library's closing in 10 minutes. go. Margaret and I will handle that.
I'll do my job.
No, you can't. One thing about
I got them boys out of here. Well, forget it.
That man does not know how lucky he is. I'll just pop up for sandwiches.
Oh, no, don't go. I'm not even hungry.
Well, I'm starving. I'll bring you some coffee. I'll only be a minute. Here. Take my keys. You can lock up if you're so worried. Now, I won't be long.
All right. Sir, the library's closed.
Already? I had no idea. I've made such progress today. Now, murderers are so fascinating when you get to know them. Can I show you something? John Reginald Halliday Christie. Doesn't look like a killer, does he? But he was.
Huh.
And a necrophiliac to boot. Not like our man. Whatever our man looks like. I mean, for all we know, our killer could be some dapper little man in an old trench coat and who wears little round glasses. Then one day he snaps and goes berserk. Yeah, I can see our man working himself up into quite a little frenzy. It's what you have to do to kill with a knife, you know. Like our man always does. I mean, it's harder than you think to slash a man's throat. You gotta get close. Close enough to feel their breath on your hand. Close enough to look into their eyes and see the blood spurt out.
Please stop.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you.
I do need to close up. I have the other work to do tonight.
Are you working late by yourself?
Yes. No, I mean, Mrs. Pritchard is working late also.
Oh, I thought she went out.
She's coming right back.
Would you like me to stay until she returns?
No. I mean, we have a security guard.
Oh, I thought I saw him leave. You know, it wouldn't be very smart with all this unpleasantness in the park. You know, the murder last night took place just about this time. Some poor homeless person, wandering all alone, asks the wrong stranger for some change and...
You really must go. It's after hours.
Oh, I forgot to check this book out. Could you, leave it somewhere handy so I can get it when I come back?
Come back?
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Till tomorrow.
I've really enjoyed talking to you. I'm not going anyplace after all. Locked in.
Oh. I'm sorry, I forgot. Good night.
Good night. Be careful now.
thank God you're back.
What in the world is going on around
He
here?
was first at the front door, and then he was at the back. It was that crazy man, that maniac. He wanted me to open the door for him, and of course I wouldn't do that. Oh, he was huge. He was all hunched over.
Oh, that's Mr. Garvin. I let him in after 9. He works late. Poor man, he has some kind of bone disorder. You see? He was just dropping off some books. Calm yourself, dear. I am sure that there is no one out there.
No, he is out there. I know that he is. I tried to use the telephone, but that maniac cut the wires.
I turned the phone off. The switch is underneath. I'll show you.
You cut the phone off? On purpose?
It's so distracting and... Well, we are closed after all. Come on upstairs, dear. I want to talk to you. I know you're upset about these murders, but I can assure you you're quite safe here. The newspapers have built up this maniac character. He did this, he did that. What nonsense. What if it isn't a man? It could just as easily be a woman. That'd surprise everyone, wouldn't it?
Where's Grady? Hmm? You sent him away, didn't you? Maybe you killed him.
What?
Yeah, you hated him. You hate everyone. You said yourself that people get what they deserve. When you think he deserved to die.
You think I'm the murderer?
Now you want to kill me?
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Don't
Calm
touch
down.
me! Don't touch me! Doing.
Go! Let go! Let go!
Let go! I knew you were after me. Just like all the others. Like all the others. Well, I'm not afraid anymore. I showed you.
Miss Pritchard? I was checking the back doors and I heard the alarm.
Well, I guess I have to resign. Move on again. I liked it here. But this city made me nervous. So much crime. I don't like being afraid all the time. I'm sorry about giving such short notice. I hope you won't think too badly of me. Yeah.
Well, kiddies, I guess that's knife in the big city for you. Boy, do I feel sorry for Margaret. Looks like it's just one dead-end job after another. You'll be happy to know that I made a sale. The negotiations were fierce. But after I threw in a couple of acres, the rest was easy. There goes the neighborhood. Oh, hello, kiddies. Tonight's coffin caper is so crammed with ghastly greed, sickening sex, and vomitous violence that parental guidance is advised. So, guide your parents out of the room so we can have some fun. This tale concerns a gambling man with a bad case of double vision who's about to hit the hackpot. I call this twin helping of horror split personality.
These green chips are worth $5, right?
$50, sir.
No. I made a mistake. I meant they should be 5s. I bet 5.
Bet's on the table, sir.
No, but I made a mistake.
The bet's on the table.
But I made a mistake. I can't afford this much. You don't understand.
I'm sorry, sir. House rules, there's nothing I can do.
Hit me.
19. Dealer could have 20. Would you like another card, sir?
Look, you're not gonna believe this, but my kid, you know, he can't take care of himself. Now they tell me he has this kidney thing, and the insurance won't cover the medical, because I had some trouble in the Army when I was in Nam.
Would you like another card, sir?
Go ahead. You make blackjack on the next card, the house pays 5-1. You're rich, Ace.
That's if he gives me a 2.
100 says it is. You got more to lose.
Oh, what the hell? Deal me a 2. There you go.
Whoa. No, that's for your boy's operation.
Kidding, I didn't understand the game, huh?
No, I can't take it.
Oh, it's the least I can do.
I don't know what to say, Dan. Don. Listen, Don. It's very kind of you, but I cannot accept it. You keep that. My gut tells me you need that a lot more than I do. And my gut never lies, like knowing that 2 was waiting for you. Let me tell you something, Ace, 2's my lucky number. Double your pleasure, 2 heads are better than 1, all that shit. The best things in life come in 2s. You understand what I'm saying?
Make it 2 doubles.
Look, Don, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not in the best financial shape, but I can still call out a favor or 2. And I know for a fact you need a wad for your medical expenses. So here's the deal. I got an inside line on a no-risk, tax-free, limited partnership investment. Guaranteed to double our money. Minimum 10 grand. You keep that cash. Write me a personal check now. Give me your address and your phone number. Inside 2 weeks, we're sitting pretty. Your boy gets his operation. We call it 2 friends doing each other a favor. What do you say, Dan?
Don.
And how would you like that, sir?
100s will be just fine. Always a pleasure, Jimmy.
Don't mention it, Slick.
I got to get out of this shithole. I'm so tired of dodging feds. Sweet-talking old ladies out of their rainy day cash. One of these days, I'm gonna settle down. I'm gonna make that big con. Who knows? Maybe I'll even get married.
Did you pay me to fuck or listen to your life story?
Shut up! Shut the fuck up! I pay you to be whatever. I remember the first time I saw that picture, The Parent Trap, with Haley Mills. I used to pop a woody every time I saw those 2 do a scene together. I always wanted to make it with twins. Son of a bitch. Talk about a warm welcome. What the fuck is this piece of shit? Come in. Thank you. Don't mind if I do. Hello? Etchison Dobbs Blair. What a goofy-looking fuck he was.
Don't move! Unless you want your brains all over Daddy's picture. How did you get in here anyways?
Oh, take it easy, okay? I just had a little accident down the road. All I want to do is use your telephone. I just want to make a phone call. I'll be out of your hair in 2 shakes. I promise.
I'm April. That's June.
What happened to May? Excuse me. Part of my frail attempt at a little levity at a moment like this. I just want to use the telephone, okay? Don't do nothing. Thank you. Thank you. See? Just want to use the phone. Really have a beautiful home here. In fact, next to the Case Observatory up in Oak Valley, I think that this house might be Blair's greatest architectural achievement. German expressionist influence, 50s futurism.
You knew who our father was?
Are you kidding? The man was a genius. If you look at a copy of Who's Who in architecture, your father's the only listing. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know anybody who took the influence of the Bauhaus school and adapted it better to his own unique style. Phew. That guy was unbelievable. Hello? Yeah, I need a tow truck.
Do that later. You've been in an accident.
Well, it wasn't a serious accident, you know, just bumped my head, the tire blew out. What's your name again?
I'm April.
April, it's a pleasure to meet you. Very nice to see you. What's your sister's name? What's your name?
June.
June, very nice to see you.
We don't have many visitors.
Really? Girls as beautiful as you, too? I find that hard to believe.
Oh, the occasional architectural journal, but most people think we're naive. They'd love to take advantage of us.
Really?
Don't tell me you didn't know we were worth $2 billion.
So there I was at Sotheby's with my good friend Preston Chatfield of the Hyannisport Chatfields. And I'm ready to make a bid on this exquisite nouveau lamp. And all of a sudden, I noticed the tiniest little scratch on the finish. I said, oh, my cat did that 2 years ago. That lamp used to be in my collection. Could you imagine?
You like cats?
Do I like cats? Are you kidding? Sometimes I trust cats more than I do people.
Somebody call for a tow truck?
I knew it was too good to last. Well, ladies, thank you very much for your hospitality. I hope I didn't cause too much of an inconvenience. I am truly humble.
Mr. Stetson, my sister and I, if you'd care to come by again.
I figured I must have died and went to heaven. At first, I really couldn't figure out why a couple of rich babes like that would hold up like hermits. But hey, when fish come to you already in a barrel, guy can't complain too much. So I went to work.
That's in the kitchen.
And slowly but surely, they started to come out of whatever shells they were in. I'm talking a couple of icebergs starting to thaw out. I was reeling them in all right.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? I only wish there were two of them.
Then the day came I had to make my move. I had to get each of them alone. And when I did, boy, that's when things got real interesting.
You see, Daddy designed both bedrooms exactly alike. Like two sides of a mirror. Kinda like me and June.
Oh, yeah? Where is June, anyway?
April? Oh, she went out. Hasn't been out of the house in months. June's always been a little more outgoing than me anyways. We never needed to go out before Daddy died. We fought over him constantly. But now we have each other.
You two are pretty close, aren't you?
Inseparable. Until now.
She seems sweet.
Oh, she is. Unless you cross her.
Come again?
Well, I mean, everyone has a dark side, don't they? The side you don't see much.
She got a temper, huh?
Almost like a split personality.
Get out of here. I can't see your sister, you hurting a fly.
You don't know the half of it.
Look, I would never say this to her. So it's gotta be our little secret, okay?
My sister and I don't have secrets. We share everything. 50-50.
But this might hurt her feelings. You don't want to do that, do you? See, I'm afraid you two ain't exactly identical.
What do you mean?
Newsflash. One of you is just a little more beautiful than the other. And no offense, honey, but for a couple of wallflowers who don't get out much, they still make you look like a nun. So now I got them both in the palm of my hand. Either one of them will marry me in a New York minute. All I gotta do is pop the question. But that only gets me half the fortune. They both got equal say in every cent. 50-50. The only way I can get it all is if I marry both of them. And the only way I could do that is if there were two of me.
A twin brother?
I know it seems like a stupid coincidence. I guess I was embarrassed to bring it up till now.
Where is he? What's his name?
His name is Jack. He's in South Africa. We have some pretty important holdings there, and business demands that one of us stay there at all times. So he stays there a month, I spot him the next, and so on. And we trade off.
Does this mean you're leaving?
I'm afraid so. But it's only for a month. Besides, look, my brother will be home in a few days. I already told him about you two. Maybe he could drop around for a little visit. But I must warn you, though. He's a little more outgoing than I am. He's not as educated or well-spoken. You know, he talks that California jargon, and he's very flamboyant. Whoa, ladies. Vic told me you were a couple of radical babes. But I must confess to being totally stoked and overwhelmed. You dig? I'm too sexy for Milan. Too sexy for Milan.
Do you, April Dobbs Blair, take this man to have and to hold in sickness and in health as long as you both shall live?
I do.
Do you, June Etchison Blair, take this man to honor and cherish in sickness and in health as long as you both shall live?
I do.
Then by the powers vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife.
Bingo. Oh! Hey! Shut that! Charlie Chan, excuse me, I don't mean to intrude, but I like to catch a few Z's over here. It's okay? You don't mind, do you? Go play someplace else, okay? Sorry. See? Nice and quiet, calm, serene. It's beautiful. Thank you very much. Life's a bitch, ain't it, Wong?
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? That we can finally put the past behind us? We deserve to be happy, you know. Daddy would have wanted it this way. Only wish both our husbands could be with us at the same time. We could always share. Darling, why can't I come with you to South Africa?
I told you, it's hot, it's sticky, you'd hate it.
Well, when's your brother coming back anyways? June misses him so much she's beside herself.
Tomorrow night. Why is this stupid drawer always locked? What the hell's in it anyway? Where's my shirt? Oh, thank you.
Honey.
What?
You're back.
Oh, yeah. So I got a little sunburn. Sun's a lot hotter in South Africa, let me tell you.
Let me tell you, the man is an animal. Last night, he tied me to the bed when we, and it wasn't the first time either. You're kidding. Vic does that to me, too. No. I guess they're like in all sorts of ways, aren't they? When Jack took off his shirt for bed, his back was all tanned, except for this little pale strip. You're kidding. Just before Vic left for South Africa, he sunburned his back and he had the same thing.
Katarina! When we kiss, pretty miss, I'm an ecstasy. See, Katarina! But when we kiss, pretty miss, are you thinking of me? Katarina! Just how long is the list? Up the list you get. Oh, how happy I'm too sexy for my hair, too sexy for this earring, too sexy for this house, too sexy. Hey, honey! You two bitchin' babes better be getting dressed to kill, 'cause I'm taking you out for the most awesome feast ever. Blair twins questioned the death of architect. Foul play suspected in death of architect. Get the fuck out. Twins acquitted of father's death by juvenile court. You got to be fucking kidding. Hey, what the fuck is this? What's going on? Hey, what are you doing? Huh? What the fuck you doing? Let me go. What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing?
Hello, darling.
Okay, so I was in love with the both of you. Big deal. What was I supposed to do, huh? Hey, did I make you both happy? Tell the truth. Did I make you both happy? Come on. Hey, I don't know about that thing with your father. You know, I'm not saying you did anything, but, even if you did, what the fuck is the difference? What do I care, huh? You were young. You were girls. You're frivolous little kids. Come on, huh? Who gives a shit what you did?
But we did do it, Vic. We shared everything. But we didn't want to share him anymore. It was too hard, one of him and two of us. We were too selfish. Like now.
Where you going? Where's she going? Where's she going? Hey! Hey! Where you going? What's she doing?
I'm gonna let her do the honors.
What honors?
She was always the more outgoing of the two of us. Right, Jack?
Hey! Hey! Come on, huh? Fucking screwball! I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. Come on. Hey! Hey! Get out of here with that! Are you crazy? Stop! Hey!
I guess old Venal Vic thought he could double his fun and his bank account. Too bad he was only half right. Oh well, it just proves the old saying. Behind every bad man, there's two women. With a chainsaw! So, kiddies, care for a little maim of chance? Deads I win, tails you ooze.
The city never slept, or at least that was what the neon signs promised. Streets glistened wet from a late rain, reflecting the garish glow of billboards hawking everything from diet pills to hair restorers. In this urban carnival of flickering light and shadow, ordinary citizens shuffled home after their tedious lives, oblivious to the eyes that followed them from the darkness. And somewhere, among the alleyways and empty storefronts, a maniac was at large. Not a maniac in the sense of some weary drunk staggering down the sidewalk. Oh no, this was a connoisseur of chaos, a gourmet of gore, an artist whose medium was panic. At first, it was whispers. A scream here, a muffled plea there, all dismissed as another domestic quarrel, a brawl in the wrong part of town. The police department, overworked and underpaid, scribbled reports that went nowhere, chalking it all up to coincidences, mischief, and bad luck. But the stories grew, like dark clouds gathering in the sky, until even the bravest taxi driver refused to pick up fares after 10 p.m. And yet, the maniac's presence was subtle, almost teasing. A shadow glimpsed at the corner of an eye, a fleeting reflection in a store window, a silhouette that seemed to vanish when you turned toward it. Detective Harold Finch, a seasoned cop with more years behind the badge than he cared to count, was the first to notice the pattern. He had seen plenty of lunatics in his time, from petty thieves to the occasionally psychotic vagrant, but there was a rhythm to this one. The killings were methodical yet theatrical, leaving little clues like breadcrumbs, as if daring someone to follow. Finch sat at his cluttered desk, the hum of the fluorescent lights above accentuating the tension in his shoulders. Maps sprawled across the table, red pins marking the latest incidents, strings connecting locations in a web that looked almost artistic. He lit a cigarette, the smoke curling like lazy question marks, and muttered to himself, "This isn't random. It's deliberate. And it's personal." Meanwhile, in an apartment high above the city, the maniac prepared his next masterpiece. He wasn't concerned with fame or notoriety. The thrill came from the anticipation, the meticulous planning, the orchestration of terror. Every object was chosen carefully, every path calculated to maximize suspense. A kitchen knife gleamed under the harsh light of the stove, not out of necessity but as a statement. The walls bore faint traces of sketches and notes, reminders of previous encounters, diagrams of escape routes, and annotations about human behavior under fear. He paused, looking over his collection, a soft smile curling on his lips, savoring the irony that the world remained blind to the horror just beneath their polished veneer. On the street, ordinary life continued. A young couple argued over groceries, a street musician coaxed melodies from a rusted saxophone, the neon lights flickered as if winking conspiratorially. People laughed, walked, and lived, oblivious that one misstep, one casual glance in the wrong direction, could make them part of the maniac's next tableau. Finch had warned everyone in the precinct to be vigilant, but the citizens were too wrapped up in their banal routines. The maniac thrived on this complacency, knowing that the more ordinary life seemed, the more shocking the interruption. Back in his lair, the maniac meticulously labeled each item, placing them in boxes like a collector. There was a diary, ripped from a bench outside a cafe, detailing someone's mundane complaints about office politics. There were photographs, stolen from unsuspecting pedestrians, capturing candid moments of joy or sorrow, frozen in time. These were trophies, not of kills but of fear and chaos, proof of the disruption he had orchestrated in people's lives. And he was never careless. Every box, every object, was catalogued with precision, as if he were curating a gallery of human vulnerability. Finch, meanwhile, had begun to connect dots that no one else saw. The incidents were centered around certain streets, certain neighborhoods. He visited crime scenes, noting the subtle deviations from ordinary chaos, a door left slightly ajar, a lamp knocked over with deliberate precision, footprints leading to nowhere. The maniac's signature was in the details, the nuances that a casual observer might dismiss. Finch knew that understanding the psychology was key. He immersed himself in the reports, staring at photographs of the scenes, trying to imagine the mind behind them. Every time he thought he had a handle, a new incident disrupted his theories, a fresh puzzle piece that refused to fit neatly. The city itself seemed to conspire, the darkness amplifying every sound. Rats scurried across alleys, their squeaks echoing like miniature warnings. The wind whistled through fire escapes, carrying distant sirens that made the city's pulse feel erratic. It was in these moments, when the world was half asleep, that the maniac thrived. He moved with the fluidity of a shadow, blending with the night, leaving barely a trace. And yet, he never killed indiscriminately. There was a method, an art to it. Each scare, each disappearance, served a narrative only he understood, a dark comedy for an audience too naive to recognize the show. That evening, Finch found himself at the site of a new incident, a small bakery that had recently reported a break-in. The display case was shattered, pastries strewn like casualties on a battlefield, but nothing had been stolen. The pattern was familiar, the deliberate placement, the eerie absence of the expected, the subtle message that someone had been there and was watching. Finch knelt, examining the broken glass, his gloved fingers tracing faint smudges. "It's a game," he murmured. "A cruel, sick game, but a game nonetheless." Meanwhile, the maniac observed from a distance, hidden in the shadows, his eyes gleaming with amusement. He watched Finch, noting the detective's meticulous nature, the way he bent over evidence with obsessive care. The maniac had a new participant for his theater of terror, and Finch, unknowingly, had just taken center stage. Every move the detective made, every hypothesis he formulated, only fueled the anticipation. The thrill was not in killing, it was in seeing the chaos unfold, the human mind contort in confusion and fear. As the night deepened, the city seemed to hold its breath. Lights flickered, a distant dog barked, the wind carried a faint scent of rain-soaked asphalt and spilled coffee. And somewhere above it all, in his dimly lit apartment, the maniac prepared for his next act. He adjusted his mask, a grotesque yet oddly elegant creation, and surveyed the city through his window. Below, the streets teemed with life, unaware that each step, each turn, could lead them into his narrative. He smiled, a slow, deliberate curl of lips, savoring the delicious tension. Tonight would be another masterpiece, another act in the dark comedy that no one had yet realized was being performed. Detective Finch, unaware that he was now a character in someone else's story, drove home through the slick streets. He replayed the evening's observations in his mind, noting anomalies, patterns, and possibilities. Little did he know that with every mile, the maniac's eyes followed him, tracing his path, studying his reactions. Finch was diligent, intelligent, dedicated, but even the best could not anticipate the improvisation, the artistry, the twisted humor of a mind that thrived in shadows. By midnight, the city's heartbeat slowed. Few remained on the streets, lights dimmed in apartments, and the occasional neon sign buzzed lazily. Yet, beneath the calm veneer, the tension simmered. The maniac moved, silent and precise, a phantom in a world of sleepwalkers. He considered his options for the evening, the perfect scenario to unsettle, confuse, and terrify. His diary, his photographs, his notes, they were all ready, a meticulous collection of human reactions waiting to be orchestrated. The night was young, the city ignorant, and the stage set for another scene of calculated horror. As Finch finally parked and entered his apartment, locking the door behind him, he felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. Somewhere, someone was watching, someone clever enough to anticipate his every move. But what could he do? He had no idea who, or what, he was up against. The maniac was everywhere and nowhere, a shadow in the periphery, a ghost in the neon-lit haze. And as Finch settled in for a night of restless thought, the maniac watched from above, a grin spreading across his face, knowing that the game had just begun. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the twisted observer, the master of fear and chaos, planning his next act. And somewhere in the darkness, the faintest whisper of a laugh carried on the wind, a harbinger of terror yet to come. The maniac at large had only just begun, and the night was far from over. The morning arrived with a grey, oppressive sky that threatened rain but delivered only a persistent drizzle. Finch brewed a bitter cup of coffee, staring out the window at the streets that seemed mundane in daylight but had proven treacherous under cover of night. The detective's eyes lingered on a man crossing the street, a mother chasing her toddler, the milkman balancing crates with mechanical precision. Every movement, every glance, could have been a clue, though the mundane often masked it. And that was precisely what the maniac relied upon, the ordinary, the complacency, the blissful ignorance of the city's residents. By mid-morning, Finch was at the precinct, sprawled across reports and photographs, trying to connect the new string of incidents. The patterns were maddeningly intricate. Locations were spread across districts that had no apparent connection, yet Finch could feel the invisible threads weaving them together. He noted the times, nights punctuated with precise intervals, suggesting a mind that thrived on routine yet enjoyed improvisation within a controlled framework. He traced lines across a city map, muttering about coordinates and timelines, a man obsessed with anticipating the next step. Meanwhile, the maniac prepared his next act in the dim safety of his apartment. The walls, covered with sketches and schematics, seemed to pulsate with his intentions. He selected a new location, an upscale clothing boutique that had recently expanded its late-night hours. It was the perfect stage for psychological chaos, bright lights, mirrors, and the sense of self-importance that the customers exuded. He imagined their reactions, the subtle terror as someone or something interrupted their curated world. A careful placement of shadows, a strategically knocked-over display, and the show would commence. Outside, life proceeded as usual, the citizens oblivious to the predator among them. A delivery man stumbled over a puddle, cursing, unaware that the maniac had observed him moments before. Two teenagers laughed as they emerged from a cafe, their carefree chatter a stark contrast to the tension lurking unseen. Finch, in his unremarkable brown overcoat, passed the same scenes, noticing the nuances that others would miss, a window slightly ajar, a car parked too close to a curb, footprints fading in the wet asphalt. Each detail was a brushstroke in a larger, sinister canvas. By noon, Finch's office phone rang insistently, breaking his concentration. "Detective Finch," he answered, voice tight, already anticipating the worst. The voice on the other end was frantic, reporting a series of vandalized cars in a district previously untouched. Windows shattered, tires slashed, interiors scattered with seemingly random items, a cookbook, a pair of ballet shoes, a child's toy truck. Each object carefully chosen, an eerie echo of the maniac's prior displays. Finch felt the familiar chill of dread, the pattern was expanding, the canvas growing more elaborate, and the predator was playing with him, daring him to decode the next move. Meanwhile, the maniac moved through the streets unnoticed, a shadow in the drizzle. His coat clung to his frame, and his boots made no sound on the wet asphalt. He paused occasionally, observing people as if studying their reactions for a performance that only he would appreciate. A shopkeeper yelled at a cat for knocking over a display, and the maniac smiled, noting how easily humans lost control when confronted with disorder. Finch, somewhere nearby, was retracing his steps, unaware of how close he was to a live exhibit of the maniac's artistry. By mid-afternoon, Finch decided to visit the boutique himself. He entered the sleek, mirrored space, noting the reflection of his own wary eyes as he moved among racks of designer clothing. Nothing seemed amiss at first glance, yet a nagging sensation told him otherwise. The boutique's owner, a harried young woman, fretted over minor disarray, a pile of scarves toppled here, a mannequin slightly askew there. Finch's gaze lingered on a series of small scratches on the polished floor, nearly invisible unless observed with attention. The pieces were subtle, delicate, deliberate, the hand of someone who reveled in controlling chaos without direct confrontation. The maniac, outside, monitored Finch from a vantage point across the street. Through a slightly cracked window, he observed the detective, noting his gestures, the way he catalogued details in his mind, the furrow of his brow as he pieced together seemingly insignificant anomalies. Finch was cautious, meticulous, and intelligent, the perfect participant in a psychological cat-and-mouse game. The maniac reveled in the irony. The hunter was being hunted, and neither fully realized the extent of the orchestration. Night fell once more, bringing with it a blanket of darkness that clung to the city like a second skin. Finch returned to his apartment, checking locks, double-checking windows, and replaying the day's observations. There was a pattern to the incidents, yes, but the maniac's brilliance lay in disruption, creating apparent randomness that frustrated attempts at prediction. Finch's mind raced, exploring permutations and scenarios, trying to predict the predator's next move. Meanwhile, the maniac, perched on a rooftop, observed the detective's ritualistic behaviors with perverse delight. The maniac's attention shifted back to the boutique. He had prepared a series of small disturbances, subtle enough to disorient the staff and patrons without causing immediate panic. A strategically placed scarf here, a tilted mannequin there, and he imagined the psychological domino effect: confusion, irritation, mild terror, the subtle impression that something unseen had manipulated the environment. He worked with meticulous precision, savoring the anticipation as he visualized Finch arriving the next day, analyzing the clues, attempting to understand the methodology. Meanwhile, Finch's thoughts grew darker. The incidents were escalating, the intervals shortening, and the maniac's audacity emboldening with each act. He reviewed photographs from previous scenes, noting minutiae that previously went unnoticed, the positioning of items, the sequence of disruptions, subtle markings that hinted at timing and intent. Finch's gaze lingered on a series of footprints that seemed to lead nowhere, disappearing into the night like ghosts. He knew that the maniac's mind was brilliant yet deranged, capable of inflicting terror without direct contact. In the boutique, the disturbances began to take effect. A customer knocked over a vase, apologizing frantically. A staff member cursed under her breath as she rearranged clothing racks. The overall tension became palpable. The maniac observed from his hidden perch, noting reactions, cataloging human behavior as an artist catalogues brushstrokes. Each response added to the narrative, a testament to his control over the environment, the orchestration of chaos without direct intervention. By midnight, Finch was poring over maps and photographs once again, frustrated yet determined. The maniac's pattern had emerged with enough clarity to suggest intelligence, but too many variables remained, each incident introducing new complexity. Finch lit a cigarette, the smoke curling like question marks above his head, and considered the city in its entirety. Every street, every building, every shadow could hide the maniac, but there was one certainty: the predator was meticulous, calculating, and always one step ahead. The maniac, meanwhile, prepared his next move. He had selected another site, a popular late-night diner that drew a mix of night shift workers and insomniacs. The location was perfect for small, psychologically disruptive acts: a misplaced chair, a dropped plate, subtle rearrangements designed to induce confusion and fear. He moved silently through the city streets, invisible among neon reflections and rain-slicked asphalt. Every action was deliberate, a small disturbance in the urban ecosystem that he controlled with precision and glee. Back in his apartment, Finch reviewed his notes, trying to anticipate the maniac's logic. He could see the patterns, the intervals, the meticulous planning, but he could not predict the creativity. The maniac's genius was not just in the acts themselves but in the theater of fear, the way ordinary people became actors in an elaborate performance. Finch's frustration mounted, tempered by a grudging respect for the predator's intellect. Somewhere, the maniac observed, amused by the detective's struggle, savoring the knowledge that he controlled the narrative, the fear, the chaos. The night deepened, and the city's pulse slowed to a rhythm of faint sirens, occasional footsteps, and the whisper of the wind. The maniac moved through the darkness like a phantom, setting the stage for his next act, confident in his mastery of both environment and observer. Finch, oblivious to his proximity to the predator, remained engrossed in analysis, determined yet unaware that every thought, every deduction, had already been anticipated. The cat-and-mouse game continued, a psychological duel played out against the indifferent backdrop of a city that slept, unaware of the dark artistry unfolding in its midst. And so, as the city braced for another night, the maniac at large prepared to escalate, to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, the mundane into terror, all while remaining unseen. Finch, the dogged detective, remained unaware that he was no longer simply observing a pattern. He was a participant, a character in a narrative of fear written by a mind far more twisted and inventive than his own. The rain fell steadily, washing the streets clean of yesterday's grime, yet leaving behind the faintest traces of the maniac's passage, a footprint, a displaced object, a whisper in the night. And above it all, the predator watched, planned, and waited, confident that the best was yet to come, and that the city, its people, its order, its sense of safety, was utterly at his mercy. The diner was a haven for the insomniacs, night shift workers, and lonely hearts who wandered the streets when the city's lights dimmed to a dull glow. The smell of fried food, stale coffee, and linoleum polish hung thick in the air, an aroma that should have been comforting but, tonight, carried an undertone of unease. The maniac had already arrived, unseen, slipping through the back alley and into the shadows cast by the flickering neon, open 24 hours sign. He observed the patrons, noting their routines, the clerk wiping down tables with robotic efficiency, the trucker nursing a coffee while reading the morning paper, a solitary woman tapping her fingers against a cup. Every detail was a thread he intended to tug. Detective Finch, oblivious to the impending disruption, had spent hours retracing the previous incidents. His notes were an intricate tangle of timelines, locations, and seemingly trivial details. The more he studied, the more the pattern eluded him, like a slippery phantom mocking his diligence. He knew the maniac was methodical, yet creative, and he feared that each act would escalate further, testing the city's tolerance and his own limits. Finch didn't yet realize that tonight, the predator would orchestrate an incident designed specifically to torment him. Inside the diner, the maniac moved with a quiet purpose. A chair shifted subtly, unnoticed by the clerk but sufficient to catch the edge of a foot. A cup rattled against the counter, a minor sound that made the solitary woman glance over nervously. Mirrors reflected fragmented images, creating a sense of distorted reality. He relished the micro-terror, the subtle psychological manipulations that transformed a familiar space into something vaguely threatening. Every action was deliberate, measured, and perfectly executed to generate unease without detection. Meanwhile, Finch had taken a detour, following a tip about a disturbance reported by a passerby. He entered the diner, noting the flickering lights, the quiet murmurs of patrons, the smell of grease and despair mingling in the air. Nothing seemed overtly wrong, yet he sensed the tension. His detective's intuition prickled, a silent alarm that someone, was watching. He moved cautiously, scanning reflections in the mirrors, noting the misaligned chairs, the faint smudge on the floor that suggested movement not yet accounted for. Finch's instincts told him this was more than minor mischief, it was deliberate, designed to elicit subtle panic. The maniac, aware of Finch's presence, crouched behind a partition, peering over the edge with gleaming eyes. He had predicted Finch's movements with chilling precision. Each shuffle, each glance, each thoughtful pause was catalogued for his amusement. The detective's analytical mind, normally a weapon against criminals, had unwittingly stepped into the maniac's arena. Every hypothesis Finch formed, every deduction he made, was anticipated and rendered nearly irrelevant by the predator's improvisational brilliance. As Finch approached the counter, the maniac enacted the next phase of his plan. A small bell atop the door jingled, though no one had entered or exited. The clerk jumped slightly, muttering to himself, unaware of the manipulation. The solitary woman stiffened, her fingers tapping faster against the table. Mirrors reflected images that didn't belong, a shadow in the corner, a figure in the back room that disappeared when observed directly. The diner's ordinary ambience became a stage for psychological terror, a live demonstration of chaos controlled with surgical precision. Finch, sensing the disturbance, moved to investigate. He noted the misaligned chairs, the faint smear on the floor, the subtle inconsistencies in the reflections. His eyes narrowed, his detective instincts firing on all cylinders. There was a pattern, yes, but it was unlike anything he had encountered before, meticulous, yet whimsical, deliberate, yet chaotic. He felt the weight of observation pressing upon him, as though the room itself was alive, responding to his presence. Little did he know, it was indeed alive, with the mind of a predator orchestrating every nuance. Outside, the maniac adjusted his position, watching Finch from the alley. He had chosen this night specifically for its psychological potential, the diner's patrons were already vulnerable, tired, and susceptible to suggestion. The reflections, the misplaced items, the subtle noises, all were designed to destabilize, to create discomfort without overt violence. He smiled at the effectiveness of his craft, the way ordinary people could be manipulated into unease by a masterful arrangement of environment and suggestion. Finch's gaze scanned the room, unaware that he was being observed with equal, if not greater, scrutiny. Inside the diner, the tension rose incrementally. A spilled cup of coffee, unnoticed by all but Finch, became a catalyst for small disturbances, a scuff of a shoe on the floor, a napkin fluttering to the ground, the faint creak of a chair rocking. Each sound, each movement, was magnified in perception, creating a sense of imminent, though invisible, threat. The patron's awareness heightened, and Finch's instincts, honed by years of experience, detected the subtle orchestration. He realized the incidents were not random, they were carefully crafted psychological experiments, designed to elicit fear, uncertainty, and confusion. The maniac, observing from his vantage, adjusted the final elements. A mirror shifted imperceptibly, creating a reflection that suggested movement where there was none. Shadows elongated, contorting in impossible angles as the flickering lights played across surfaces. Finch, noting these discrepancies, began to piece together the manipulation. The predator was not concerned with physical harm tonight, this act was purely psychological, a rehearsal for something more ambitious. Each subtle disturbance was a brushstroke in the maniac's ongoing canvas of terror. Finch's focus sharpened. He moved deliberately through the diner, noting inconsistencies, tracking the subtle manipulations. His mind worked to decode the perpetrator's methods, reconstruct the sequence of orchestrated events, and predict the next disturbance. Each observation brought him closer to understanding the maniac's genius and madness, yet the predator's adaptability ensured that no hypothesis remained correct for long. Finch felt a mixture of exhilaration and dread. He was confronting a mind far more inventive and deranged than most criminals he had encountered. Meanwhile, the maniac's excitement built. He reveled in the interplay between observer and observed, predator and detective. The subtle chaos unfolded precisely as intended, small, escalating incidents that tested the limits of human perception, producing tension, disorientation, and unease. Finch's analytical brilliance, though formidable, played directly into the maniac's hands, as each deduction could be anticipated, manipulated, or subverted. The predator's satisfaction was palpable, a silent celebration of intellect and cruelty intertwined. The diner's patrons grew restless. Whispers circulated as small mishaps compounded, the subtle disturbances triggering discomfort and anxiety. Finch noted the reactions, comparing them against his expectations. He was beginning to understand the predator's methodology, a delicate balance between order and disruption, a dance of psychological manipulation that left victims questioning their own perceptions. Each person was unwittingly participating in the maniac's performance, their responses catalogued for future analysis. By the late hours, the diner had returned to relative calm, though a residue of unease lingered. Finch left, deep in thought, his mind tracing the sequence of disruptions, attempting to deduce the maniac's next move. Outside, the rain continued, the city streets slick with reflections of neon lights and blurred silhouettes. The predator, concealed in shadows, tracked Finch's exit, noting every step, every glance, every calculation made in earnest pursuit of comprehension. The detective's dedication only heightened the maniac's anticipation, promising an escalation in the days to come. The maniac retreated to his apartment, satisfied with the evening's events. He catalogued his observations meticulously, noting reactions, times, and the effectiveness of each manipulation. The night had been a success, ordinary people had been subtly terrorized, the detective had been drawn into observation, and the city remained blissfully unaware of the calculated orchestration of fear unfolding within its confines. The predator's mind, constantly active, shifted already to the next stage, planning more elaborate disturbances, weaving fear into the city's fabric with increasing sophistication. Finch, at home, reviewed his notes late into the night. He scribbled observations, hypothesized strategies, and attempted to predict the maniac's next location. Exhaustion tugged at him, yet his mind remained alert, cognizant of the stakes. The city's ordinary rhythm continued outside, ignorant of the escalating drama. Finch understood that the maniac's genius lay not in violence, but in psychological mastery, the the subtle art of manipulating perception, inducing unease, and orchestrating terror without detection. By the hour before dawn, both predator and detective were engaged in a silent duel, separated by walls, distance, and circumstance, yet inextricably linked. The city slept, unaware, as one mind orchestrated chaos and another sought to comprehend it. The delicate balance between hunter and hunted had shifted subtly, the stage set for escalation. The maniac at large had demonstrated mastery of psychological manipulation, and Finch, determined yet unprepared, was now a participant in a game that would test intellect, perception, and sanity alike. And so, as the first light of morning crept into the city's skyline, the tension remained unresolved. The predator's plans were in motion, the detective's strategies forming, and the city itself teetered unknowingly on the precipice of chaos. The maniac at large, invisible yet omnipresent, had claimed another night of psychological conquest, setting the stage for an inevitable confrontation that promised to challenge the boundaries of fear, intellect, and control. Dawn broke with a dull grey haze, casting the city in a muted light that barely illuminated the slick streets. Finch sat at his kitchen table, coffee in hand, eyes scanning the newspaper for reports of overnight disturbances. Nothing. The maniac's acts, subtle yet terrifying, often left little trace for the authorities to grasp fully, relying on psychological terror rather than physical destruction. Finch's frustration simmered. He knew the predator was intelligent, clever, and audacious, someone who understood the power of fear in its most insidious form. Across town, the maniac observed the city from the roof of a derelict building, binoculars trained on streets that looked ordinary but were riddled with potential. He enjoyed the thrill of anticipation, the invisible chessboard spread out before him, each pedestrian a pawn unwittingly drawn into his game. He scanned the rooftops and alleyways, noting escape routes, vantage points, and the rhythm of foot traffic. His mind thrummed with excitement. Tonight's act would be more elaborate, more daring, and, above all, tailored to provoke the perfect combination of panic and confusion. Finch, meanwhile, reviewed his notes with obsessive precision. The patterns were complex, seemingly random locations, inconsistent intervals, objects placed with careful deliberation. But Finch had learned to read between the lines, noticing subtle consistencies, a particular angle in which disturbances occurred, the timing relative to certain events, and the predator's predilection for ordinary spaces rendered extraordinary through manipulation. He scribbled annotations, connecting dots that almost formed a coherent picture. Almost. By mid-morning, Finch decided to revisit one of the prior scenes, a small park where several incidents had occurred. The place was quiet, littered with remnants of the night's rain, puddles reflecting grey skies, soggy leaves clinging stubbornly to branches, and faint footprints leading nowhere. He knelt, tracing patterns in the dirt, trying to imagine the predator's path, the logic that governed the chaos. Each step, each movement, seemed deliberate yet whimsical, as if the maniac was playing with a puzzle that only he could solve. Finch knew he was following a mind far more twisted and cunning than most criminals he had encountered. The maniac, sensing Finch's investigative trajectory, adapted. He moved silently along shadowed alleys, slipping into spaces where his presence was impossible to detect. The thrill of control surged through him. The detective's diligence was a challenge, an opportunity to craft new layers of fear. He contemplated tonight's location carefully, an abandoned movie theater, its peeling posters promising thrills long forgotten, a place that would amplify the psychological tension with echoes, darkness, and forgotten memories. Perfect. Inside the theater, Finch's earlier investigation had revealed minor anomalies, a seat slightly out of alignment, faint scuff marks on the floor, remnants of debris that didn't belong. Each observation was catalogued, analyzed, and compared against previous incidents. The predator's genius lay not in raw violence but in manipulation of perception. Ordinary spaces became treacherous, familiar routines distorted, and the line between reality and suggestion blurred. Finch, aware of these subtleties, felt the weight of the predator's intelligence pressing on him. As night approached, the theater's worn marquee flickered with a faint, intermittent glow. The maniac entered with the precision of a conductor orchestrating a symphony, noting every seat, every shadow, every potential reaction. He adjusted his coat, ensuring that no movement betrayed his presence, and surveyed the space with anticipation. The theater, once a relic of entertainment, was about to become a canvas for fear, and every reaction would be noted, every detail catalogued. Finch, following the trail of incidents, arrived at the theater shortly after dusk. The building loomed over him, silent and imposing, as though aware of its role in the predator's design. He hesitated at the entrance, noticing subtle distortions, posters slightly askew, a faint draft in the lobby that seemed to suggest movement. The air was heavy with expectation, and Finch's instincts screamed that something, or someone, was watching, observing, waiting. Every footstep echoed unnaturally, playing tricks on the senses, and the detective felt the familiar churn of anxiety and excitement. Inside, the maniac set his traps with meticulous care. A projection screen was slightly misaligned, creating shadows that flickered unexpectedly. Chairs were subtly shifted, the floor scuffed in patterns that suggested passage where none occurred. Mirrors and reflective surfaces were positioned to create distortions, disorienting anyone who entered. The maniac reveled in the anticipation, imagining the detective's meticulous examination, the way he would attempt to decipher the underlying logic. Every move was calculated, each minor disturbance an instrument in the grand composition of terror. Finch moved through the theater cautiously, scanning the room for signs of manipulation. His experience allowed him to perceive subtle anomalies, yet the magnitude of the predator's planning was overwhelming. He noted the slight tilts of chairs, the irregular reflections in broken glass, the faint scuff marks, and the eerie absence of footprints in certain areas. Each discovery deepened the sense of unease, the realization that the predator was not merely random but methodical, controlling the environment with a precision that bordered on artistic obsession. Outside, the maniac watched through a cracked window, tracking Finch's every move. He felt a surge of satisfaction. The detective's presence elevated the evening from mere observation to a true performance. The predator thrived on the interplay of observer and observed, relishing the psychological tension, the subtle manipulations, and the unseen influence over human behavior. The theater, dark and cavernous, echoed with potential for chaos, and the maniac's mind raced with possibilities, envisioning the terror he could provoke through calculated, minimal intervention. The theater's interior became a stage for subtle psychological terror. Finch noticed minor disturbances escalating, a dropped soda cup rolling across the floor, a curtain shifting without wind, a faint echo suggesting movement in an empty hallway. Each detail contributed to an escalating sense of unease, a feeling that the familiar environment had become alien, a product of deliberate manipulation. Finch's mind raced to identify patterns, yet the predator's improvisational skill ensured that each deduction was met with unpredictable variables. Meanwhile, the maniac prepared for the final phase of his act. A series of carefully timed auditory cues, a creak of the floor, the rustle of fabric, the distant echo of footsteps, were orchestrated to maximize anxiety without exposing his presence. The subtlety of the plan was essential, the terror derived from suggestion, perception, and anticipation rather than overt confrontation. Each element was arranged to provoke reactions, to test the limits of observation and patience, and to leave a lasting impression of unease. Finch, aware of the heightened tension, moved slowly, cataloging every anomaly, attempting to predict the predator's next action. He recognized the underlying pattern. The maniac relied on control of perception, environmental cues, and timing to manipulate emotions. The detective's mind worked furiously, tracing potential paths, analyzing probable behaviors, and preparing strategies for containment. Yet he remained unaware that each step had been anticipated, each hypothesis accounted for, and each observation manipulated by the predator's genius. As midnight approached, the theater seemed alive with unseen energy. Shadows lengthened, echoes carried unnaturally, and the air thickened with anticipation. The maniac watched with gleeful precision, noting reactions, cataloging fear, and preparing for the eventual confrontation he intended to orchestrate. Finch, methodical yet vulnerable to the unexpected, continued his examination, unaware that he had become a character in a narrative authored by a mind both brilliant and deranged. The predator's preparations complete, he retreated to a concealed position, observing the detective's movements, studying the subtleties of human response, and savoring the psychological interplay. The theater, though empty of other patrons, became a labyrinth of perception, a controlled experiment in fear and observation. Finch, determined yet unwittingly manipulated, continued to trace anomalies, piecing together the puzzle that only the maniac could fully comprehend. Outside, the rain began to fall again, slicking the streets, reflecting neon glows, and masking the predator's movements. Finch left the theater, exhausted yet driven, mentally replaying the evening's events. The maniac, hidden in the shadows, smiled, knowing that each encounter, each observation, each calculated scare was part of a larger narrative that would unfold with increasing sophistication. The night was far from over, and the predator's mastery of manipulation ensured that every subsequent act would escalate, drawing both Finch and the city deeper into his orchestrated chaos. By the early hours of the morning, both predator and detective were engaged in a silent, intricate duel. The city remained oblivious, a backdrop for the escalating tension. The maniac's acts of psychological terror had transformed ordinary spaces into instruments of fear, and Finch's determined analysis had positioned him as both observer and participant. The stage was set for the next act, promising further escalation, more intricate manipulations, and a confrontation that would test intellect, perception, and the limits of human endurance. The rain continued, washing the streets clean while leaving behind subtle signs of the predator's passage, a footprint here, a shifted object there, an echo in an alleyway. The maniac at large had once again asserted control over the environment, the perception of the city's inhabitants, and the mind of the detective who pursued him. The night's events were a prelude, a calculated rehearsal for the masterwork of terror yet to come. Finch, exhausted yet resolute, prepared for another day of investigation, unaware that the predator had already anticipated his every move. And so, as the city's skyline caught the first pale hints of dawn, a tension remained unresolved. The maniac at large had proven the potency of subtle terror, the power of suggestion, and the artistry of control. Finch, committed to understanding the pattern, remained oblivious to the full scope of the predator's capabilities. The stage was set, the pieces in motion, and the city, unaware, vulnerable, and ordinary, was positioned as the unwitting audience for the maniac's escalating spectacle of fear. The city was bathed in an uneasy twilight, the kind that made ordinary shadows stretch and bend in strange, unnatural ways. Finch had returned to his apartment, notebooks sprawled across the desk, maps pinned haphazardly on the walls, photographs of minor disturbances forming a chaotic mosaic. His eyes were tired, his mind a whirlwind of deductions and possibilities, yet he could feel the maniac's presence like a pulse in the air, a predator stalking just beyond perception. The detective knew that patience, observation, and intellect would be his only weapons against a mind that thrived on chaos and control. Meanwhile, the maniac prepared for tonight's performance, carefully selecting his next site, a boutique hotel that catered to travelers passing through the city. It was the perfect setting for subtle terror, always long and narrow, doors that creaked ominously, elevators that seemed to move with their own intent. He imagined the unsuspecting guests, the clerks checking in weary travelers, each step an opportunity to induce uncertainty. The maniac moved with deliberate silence, a shadow among shadows, cataloguing potential interactions, predicting reactions, and savoring the thrill of manipulation. By dusk, Finch had decided to inspect the hotel. Reports had come in of minor anomalies, doors slightly ajar, misplaced luggage, a guest complaining of an unsettling feeling in the hallway. He entered cautiously, scanning the lobby for anything out of place. Everything appeared ordinary at first glance, polished floors, the scent of fresh coffee, the hum of conversation. Yet Finch's instincts told him otherwise. He noted subtle asymmetries, a chair angled differently, a painting slightly tilted, the faint echo of footsteps where no one should have been walking. The maniac observed from a discreet vantage point, reveling in the detective's thoroughness. He had anticipated Finch's approach, calculated his movement, and orchestrated the sequence of disturbances to create a psychological labyrinth. Mirrors in the hallway reflected shadows in ways that made the corridors appear longer, narrower, and more disorienting. A faint hum from the elevator created a rhythm that unnerved anyone walking past. Subtle, almost imperceptible, yet infinitely effective. Finch's sharp eyes caught these inconsistencies, yet he could not pinpoint the source, which only fueled his determination to solve the puzzle. As Finch moved deeper into the hotel, he noticed more irregularities. A door would close by itself, a luggage cart was slightly off-center, the smell of cleaning agents was oddly concentrated in one corridor and absent in another. Each anomaly was deliberate, crafted by the maniac to manipulate perception and induce unease. Finch catalogued each detail, mentally reconstructing the sequence of events, aware that the pattern was methodical, intelligent, and profoundly disturbing. He had never encountered a criminal who considered psychological manipulation to be as critical as physical action. In a guest room, the maniac orchestrated the final details. A chair was tipped slightly forward, a newspaper left open with a headline unrelated to the day, a subtle smear on the mirror that suggested fingerprints yet would be untraceable. He stepped back, observing the effect from a hidden vantage, imagining the reactions of the hotel staff and any visitor who might enter. Every element was calculated, a miniature stage of controlled fear designed to provoke disorientation without detection. The maniac's creativity was the true weapon, a mind capable of crafting terror with precision and elegance. Finch, moving methodically, began to perceive the cumulative impact of the disturbances. He recognized the methodology, the pattern, yet each new manipulation introduced variables that challenged his deductions. The detective's mind raced, attempting to predict the predator's next move, aware that any lapse in attention could mean missing critical clues. The psychological weight was immense, and Finch felt the strain of engaging in a mental duel with someone whose intellect and ingenuity equaled, if not exceeded, his own. Outside, the maniac watched through the hotel's windows, tracking Finch's movements like a predator observing prey. He took notes mentally, how the detective catalogued, analyzed, and predicted which anomalies caught his attention, which reactions were subtle enough to go unnoticed. The predator delighted in this interplay, understanding that the duel was as much about observation and manipulation as any act of overt violence. The city, meanwhile, remained oblivious, a silent backdrop to a battle of intellect and psychological prowess. Inside the hotel, minor incidents began to unfold. A misplaced suitcase tumbled across the lobby, narrowly missing a bellhop. A painting shifted slightly, drawing the eye and inducing the sense that something had moved where nothing should have. The elevator hummed an irregular rhythm, causing momentary disorientation for a guest waiting alone. Finch observed each occurrence, noting the deliberate nature of the disturbances. He recognized the orchestration for what it was, a psychological performance designed to unsettle, confuse, and provoke heightened perception. The maniac, now in position above the main stairwell, adjusted mirrors and reflective surfaces to create illusions of movement and presence where none existed. Shadows elongated unnaturally, bouncing off walls in erratic yet calculated ways. Finch's gaze darted to these distortions, analyzing, cataloging, and mentally reconstructing the sequence of manipulations. He began to understand the predator's approach, subtle, indirect, relying on the environment and perception rather than brute force. Every step Finch took had been anticipated, every reaction accounted for, every deduction challenged. The tension escalated. Finch entered a hallway where the disturbances were concentrated. Chairs shifted imperceptibly, lights flickered, the distant hum of the elevator created a rhythm that seemed out of sync with reality. His heartbeat quickened as he catalogued the anomalies, aware that the predator's presence was near, invisible yet palpable. The maniac, concealed, smiled inwardly, pleased with the detective's response. Each observation, each analytical gesture, reinforced the effectiveness of the predator's methodology, turning fear into a precise instrument of control. By late evening, Finch began retracing his path, attempting to anticipate the maniac's next move. His mind was sharp, each deduction carefully weighed, each hypothesis tested against observed patterns. The predator had become more audacious, testing limits, pushing boundaries, and exploring the potential of psychological terror with greater sophistication. Finch's intellect was formidable, yet the maniac's adaptability and creativity ensured that each theory could be countered, each expectation subverted, and each observation manipulated. The hotel became a stage of subtle psychological warfare. The predator introduced new elements, a faint dripping sound where none should exist, a curtain rustling as if moved by an unseen hand, a shadow lingering longer than physically possible. Finch observed, deduced, and catalogued, recognizing the meticulous care in each disturbance. He understood the fundamental nature of the maniac's genius, the ability to manipulate perception, induce uncertainty, and provoke disorientation without revealing his presence. Outside, the city's streets were slick with rain, reflecting the neon glow of signs and the occasional passing car. The maniac moved silently, checking vantage points, adjusting minor disturbances, and ensuring that the detective's path remained consistent with his predictions. The thrill of anticipation surged within him. Finch's unwavering focus and relentless deduction heightened the predator's satisfaction. Each interaction was a dance of intellect and manipulation, a psychological duel unfolding in real time with stakes that extended far beyond physical harm. Finch, exhausted but resolute, continued his investigation late into the night. Every corridor, every room, every reflective surface was analyzed for signs of manipulation. He recognized patterns, sequences, and methodology, yet each new anomaly introduced uncertainty, challenging assumptions, and testing his perceptual acuity. The Maniac had mastered the art of subtle terror, turning ordinary spaces into arenas of psychological experimentation and transforming the city into an unwitting participant in his elaborate game. By the early hours of morning, both detective and predator were engaged in an intricate duel of observation, deduction, and anticipation. The city slept unaware, streets empty, buildings silent, yet tension lingered in the air. The Maniac had once again demonstrated mastery of environmental manipulation, perception control, and psychological orchestration, leaving Finch both challenged and determined to predict the next act. The stage was set for further escalation, promising increasingly complex disturbances and a confrontation that would test intellect, courage, and endurance alike. And so, as dawn crept into the city, the Maniac at large had asserted dominance once more, weaving fear into the city's fabric, and Detective Finch prepared for another day of investigation, unaware that every move, every deduction, every thought had been anticipated, catalogued, and subtly influenced by the Predator's genius. The duel continued, unseen, relentless, and inevitably escalating. The morning air was crisp and carried a hint of the previous night's rain, leaving the city slick and reflective under the dim light of dawn. Finch's apartment smelled faintly of coffee and cigarette smoke, a testament to hours spent immersed in investigation. Maps, photographs, and scribbled notes were strewn across the room, forming an intricate web of observations. He studied each detail meticulously, knowing that the Maniac's genius lay not in violence but in precision, manipulation, and psychological dominance. Each act was a statement, each disturbance a message, and Finch was determined to decode it all. Meanwhile, the Maniac observed the city from a shadowed rooftop, binoculars trained on streets that seemed ordinary but were teeming with opportunity. He had selected a new location, the city's public library, a place filled with quiet, predictable routines and unsuspecting visitors. Its towering shelves, echoing hallways, and labyrinthine layout made it ideal for subtle disturbances. He imagined the patrons browsing in concentration, their attention split between knowledge and environment, and he delighted in the thought of inserting himself into that delicate balance, manipulating perception without leaving overt traces. By late morning, Finch had decided to visit the library, having received reports of minor anomalies, books misplaced in odd sequences, lights flickering intermittently, and whispers of patrons feeling observed. As he entered, he was greeted by the familiar musty scent of aged paper and polished wood. The silence was almost oppressive, punctuated only by the soft rustle of pages and the distant click of footsteps. Finch moved cautiously, noting details, a chair slightly misaligned, a stack of books that seemed deliberately disrupted, and the subtle distortion of light through the high windows. Each observation was a thread in the tapestry he was unraveling. The Maniac, concealed within the library's upper balcony, watched Finch move through the space. He adjusted minor elements with careful precision, a book slid down a shelf to produce a soft, startling thump, a shadow shifted along a corridor, visible only in peripheral vision, a gentle draft caused a curtain to sway ever so slightly. These subtle manipulations were enough to provoke unease, yet too delicate to be overtly alarming. He observed Finch analyzing each disruption, noting his deductions, and silently congratulated himself on orchestrating a scenario that challenged even the detective's formidable mind. As Finch traced the source of each anomaly, he noticed a pattern. Disturbances occurred in clusters, often in areas where visibility was limited or angles were distorted. His mind worked rapidly, cataloging possibilities and testing hypotheses. He recognized the Predator's methodology, a calculated interplay of environment, perception, and timing. Every move the Maniac made was designed to provoke psychological dissonance, and Finch, though experienced, felt the subtle tension escalate with every step. The Maniac relished the duel. He had crafted the library as a stage, a controlled environment where psychological manipulation could be executed with surgical precision. Finch's analytical brilliance played directly into his hands, as the detective catalogued, theorized, and attempted to predict the next anomaly. Each calculation, each observation, was anticipated, and the Maniac adjusted his interventions with finesse, ensuring that the psychological tension remained high. The thrill of control, the art of subtle terror, was intoxicating. Inside the library, Finch followed subtle cues, the slight tilt of a shelf, the irregular spacing of books, and the faint echo of movement where no one should have been. He began to sense the orchestration, the invisible hand guiding the sequence of disturbances. His analytical mind worked to reconstruct the maniac's intent, anticipating possible escalations, yet he knew that the predator's creativity made prediction inherently uncertain. Each anomaly was a deliberate probe, testing perception, reaction, and deduction. Outside, the maniac adjusted his vantage, observing Finch's patterns, noting which disturbances drew attention and which passed unnoticed. He was not merely an observer, he was a director, sculpting fear with minimal intervention and maximal psychological effect. The interplay between detective and predator was subtle but profound, a contest of intellect, perception, and manipulation that left the city unaware of the forces at work within its streets. As evening approached, Finch's investigation took him deeper into the labyrinthine corridors of the library. The disturbances grew increasingly complex, shadows shifting in ways that defied explanation, subtle sounds echoing where no source existed, objects slightly out of place, enough to provoke anxiety without overt alarm. Finch catalogued each anomaly, connecting threads, testing hypotheses, and attempting to predict the predator's next move. The subtlety and precision of the maniac's planning were evident, and Finch's respect for the predator's intellect was tinged with frustration. The maniac orchestrated a series of escalating incidents designed to challenge Finch's reasoning further. A book fell from a shelf as if nudged by an invisible hand, a chair creaked under no apparent weight, light patterns flickered, casting eerie, shifting reflections on the walls. Each occurrence was calculated to provoke suspicion, disorientation, and heightened alertness. Finch, though methodical, found himself questioning perception, doubting the consistency of his observations, and recognizing the predator's skill in psychological manipulation. By late night, the library's corridors were alive with subtle terror. Finch moved methodically, tracking each anomaly, noting the precision of disturbances, and mentally reconstructing sequences. He began to anticipate the predator's methods, recognizing the interplay of environment, timing, and perception. Yet the maniac's adaptability ensured that every prediction was met with new variables, challenges, and surprises. Finch understood the stakes. Failure to comprehend the predator's logic could result in further escalation, yet each correct observation risked walking directly into the maniac's next act. The maniac, observing from concealed angles, adjusted minor environmental factors in real time. A curtain shifted imperceptibly, a faint creak echoed from a distant corridor, reflections in glass and mirrors produced disorienting illusions. Each manipulation was subtle, yet cumulatively effective in heightening anxiety. Finch's focused attention, though precise, became part of the predator's experiment, feeding into the maniac's understanding of human perception, behavior, and psychological endurance. By midnight, Finch began to reconstruct the pattern of disturbances, tracing the logic underlying the seemingly random incidents. He recognized that the predator was not merely causing chaos but orchestrating a sequence designed to maximize psychological impact. The detective's intellect was engaged at its fullest, each observation feeding a mental map of manipulation, yet the maniac's ingenuity ensured that no single deduction could fully anticipate the unfolding sequence. The library became a theater of subtle terror. Patrons, unaware of the predator's presence, experienced minor disturbances, books slightly misplaced, shadows stretching unnaturally, echoes that suggested movement in empty corridors. Finch observed, analyzed, and documented, recognizing the artistry of the predator's approach. Each action was deliberate, precise, and psychologically potent, a testament to the maniac's meticulous planning and creative brilliance. Outside, the rain began again, slicking streets, reflecting neon and lamplight, masking the maniac's movements. Finch departed the library, exhausted but resolute, mentally replaying the evening's events. The predator, concealed in shadows, monitored his exit, cataloging reactions, noting patterns, and preparing for further escalation. The duel was ongoing, a silent contest of intellect and perception, with the city as an unwitting stage. By the early hours of the morning, both detective and predator were engaged in an intricate, invisible confrontation. Finch's mind worked to decode the logic, while the maniac refined his methods, anticipating each deduction and reaction. The city slept, oblivious, as the battle unfolded across ordinary spaces transformed into arenas of psychological manipulation. The stakes were high, the tension palpable, and the maniac's ingenuity ensured that each subsequent act would push boundaries, challenge perception, and intensify fear. And so, as dawn approached, the maniac at large had once again demonstrated mastery over environment, perception, and psychology. Finch, undeterred but unaware of the predator's full capabilities, prepared for another day of investigation. The stage was set, the pieces in motion, and the city remained an unwitting participant in a calculated, escalating spectacle of subtle terror. The duel between intellect and madness, observation and manipulation, continued with relentless intensity, promising further acts of ingenuity, fear, and psychological artistry. The city had settled into an uneasy rhythm, the kind of quiet that seemed ordinary yet carried a sense of anticipation. Finch, having spent another night cataloguing disturbances and refining his mental map of the maniac's methods, felt the weight of fatigue pressing on him. Coffee cups littered his desk, and maps were covered with cryptic annotations. Yet even in exhaustion, he could feel the pulse of the predator's influence, a subtle tug at the edges of perception, the feeling that the world was slightly off-kilter. He knew the maniac would strike again, somewhere, sometime, and that the next act would escalate the psychological stakes. Meanwhile, the maniac was already moving. He had selected a location that offered both complexity and intimacy, an old, half-abandoned amusement park on the city's outskirts. Rusting rides, overgrown pathways, and creaking structures provided the perfect environment for subtle manipulations. He imagined the potential for echoes, shadows, and disorienting movement, and he smiled at the possibilities. His delight was intellectual, aesthetic, and terrifying, a mind thrilled by the art of fear rather than the act of violence. Each step, each adjustment, was a brushstroke in the canvas of terror he was constructing. By late afternoon, Finch had received reports of unusual activity in the amusement park, a carousel that spun intermittently despite being turned off, lights flickering in patterns that seemed unnatural, and a faint, indistinct figure glimpsed through the haze of dusk. The detective entered cautiously, noting details others might miss, the angle of a ride support beam, a discarded candy wrapper lying deliberately in a walkway, and the faint echo of movement that could not be traced to any living being. Each observation contributed to the map of the predator's presence and methodology. The maniac observed from the shadows, tracking Finch's approach and noting the detective's response to each anomaly. He adjusted minor elements in real time, a loose plank shifted slightly underfoot, a gust of wind caused a torn flag to flap erratically, and the creak of a swing suggested movement where none existed. The subtlety of these actions amplified psychological tension without revealing the manipulator's presence. Finch, analyzing the sequence of events, understood that these disturbances were deliberate, yet he could not anticipate the exact nature of the maniac's orchestration. As night fell, the amusement park became a theater of eerie stillness, punctuated by minor, disorienting disturbances. Finch moved carefully, cataloging every sound, shadow, and irregularity. The carousel's lights flickered unpredictably, creating elongated shadows that danced across the ground. A swing moved without wind, casting a moving silhouette against the nearby wall. Each anomaly, though small, contributed to the overall atmosphere of unease, and Finch recognized the predator's meticulous attention to environmental manipulation. The maniac's glee increased as he orchestrated increasingly complex interactions. He manipulated sound, light, and physical objects to induce subtle panic. A reflection in a broken mirror suggested movement behind Finch. The distant hum of machinery created a sense of presence where none existed, shadows fell at impossible angles, distorting reality. Each element was calculated to challenge the detective's perception, forcing him to question his own senses. The predator's artistry lay in control over environment, perception, and the flow of fear itself. Finch, noting the anomalies, began to trace patterns that hinted at the predator's methodology. He recognized a deliberate interplay between timing and placement, a choreography designed to provoke unease without confrontation. The detective's mind raced to reconstruct the sequence of events, to anticipate future disruptions, and to predict the maniac's next move. Yet the predator's adaptability ensured that every hypothesis was tested and every deduction challenged. Each anomaly was a puzzle piece, yet the full picture remained elusive. Outside, the maniac adjusted his vantage points, moving silently across the park's elevated walkways and shadowed alcoves. He observed Finch cataloging, analyzing, and predicting, noting how the detective's attention shifted in response to environmental manipulations. Each reaction was recorded mentally, each calculation feeding into the predator's understanding of perception, behavior, and human cognition. The duel was not of brute strength but of intellect, subtlety, and control. The predator's satisfaction came from observation, manipulation, and the silent orchestration of fear. Within the amusement park, minor disturbances escalated in complexity. Finch noted patterns in the misaligned objects, the flickering lights, and the unusual echoes. He catalogued each incident, piecing together a mental map that reflected both the predator's ingenuity and the precision of his manipulations. Every corner of the park, every ride, and every shadow was potentially influenced, creating a sense of disorientation and heightened awareness. The detective's analysis was meticulous, yet he understood that the predator's creativity made full prediction nearly impossible. The maniac orchestrated auditory cues to complement visual disturbances, the soft creak of a Ferris wheel, a whistle of wind through broken panels, the distant laughter of mechanical toys. Each sound was timed to provoke maximum anxiety, to disrupt patterns of expectation, and to heighten the detective's sense of observation. Finch noted these irregularities, mentally reconstructing sequences and attempting to predict the maniac's next intervention. Each step brought him closer to understanding the predator's methods, yet the inherent unpredictability of the maniac's genius made certainty elusive. By late evening, Finch entered the central pavilion, where the most intricate manipulations were concentrated. Lights flickered in irregular sequences, shadows fell in impossible alignments, and minor objects had been shifted to create visual dissonance. He catalogued each anomaly, tracing the patterns and testing his hypotheses. The detective understood that the predator was not causing harm through violence but through subtle, deliberate manipulation of perception. Each disturbance was a calculated instrument designed to provoke unease, confusion, and heightened awareness. The maniac, observing from concealed angles above and below the pavilion, adjusted minor elements in real time. A carousel horse shifted subtly, a reflection in a broken mirror created the illusion of movement, shadows moved at the edge of vision. Each manipulation was precise, ensuring the maximum psychological impact without revealing the manipulator's presence. Finch's attention was focused, analytical, and relentless, yet the predator's adaptability ensured that each prediction would encounter variables, challenges, and unexpected twists. Outside, the city remained unaware, its streets slick with rain, its residents oblivious to the silent contest unfolding in the amusement park. Finch, mentally exhausted but undeterred, retraced his steps, cataloguing every subtle anomaly, connecting patterns, and reconstructing sequences. The maniac observed, noting reactions, recording patterns, and preparing for escalation. The duel was ongoing, silent, intricate, and invisible to the outside world, a contest of intellect, perception, and psychological endurance. By the early hours of the morning, both detective and predator were engaged in a relentless, unseen confrontation. Finch's mind worked tirelessly to decode the logic of the disturbances, while the maniac refined interventions, adjusted environmental cues, and anticipated every analytical step. The amusement park, though empty of patrons, became a stage for psychological manipulation, perception control, and subtle terror. Each observation, each deduction, and each reaction contributed to a complex, evolving dynamic between intellect and madness. And so, as dawn approached, the maniac at large had once again demonstrated mastery over environment, perception, and psychological manipulation. Finch, resolute but unaware of the predator's full capabilities, prepared for another day of investigation. The stage was set, the pieces in motion, and the city remained an unwitting participant in a calculated, escalating spectacle of subtle terror. The duel between intellect and madness, observation and manipulation, continued with relentless intensity, promising further acts of ingenuity, fear, and psychological artistry. The morning sun struggled to penetrate the thick layer of clouds over the city, casting everything in a pallid, almost unnatural light. Finch sat at his desk, the weight of the previous night pressing on him like a heavy fog. Maps, photographs, and scribbled notes covered every surface, each representing a fragment of the maniac's complex web of disturbances. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembled slightly as he reached for a fresh cup of coffee, but his mind was sharper than ever. He knew the predator would strike again tonight, and he vowed to be ready, to anticipate every subtle manipulation, to confront the architect of fear directly. Meanwhile, the maniac observed from a rooftop across the city, a shadow among shadows. He had chosen his next stage carefully, an old, rarely used subway station beneath the city streets. Its labyrinthine tunnels, dim lighting, and echoing walls provided the perfect environment for psychological manipulation. He envisioned the unsuspecting commuters, the maintenance workers, and even the occasional curious passerby, and he relished the potential for confusion, anxiety, and controlled fear. Every surface, every shadow, every sound became an instrument in his carefully orchestrated symphony of terror. By late afternoon, Finch had received reports of unusual activity in the subway station, lights flickering without cause, announcements playing at odd intervals, and the feeling of being watched expressed by several commuters. He arrived cautiously, noting details others might dismiss, a slightly ajar door leading to a maintenance area, water pooling in strange patterns on the tiled floor, faint smudges along the walls that suggested movement without origin. Each anomaly was a puzzle piece, each irregularity a signal of the predator's meticulous orchestration. The maniac moved silently within the station, observing Finch as he examined the space. He adjusted minor elements in real time, a shadow shifted across the wall, the sound of dripping water echoed at irregular intervals, and a train's distant rumble was timed to create disorientation. Each subtle manipulation was designed to provoke unease without revealing the maniac's presence. Finch, analyzing each occurrence, realized that the disturbances were deliberate, yet the precise execution and unpredictability made anticipation nearly impossible. As evening approached, the station transformed into a controlled environment of psychological tension. Finch noticed increasingly intricate anomalies, signs slightly askew, floor tiles with faint, unnatural scuff marks, and lights flickering in unpredictable sequences. The detective catalogued each occurrence, mapping potential patterns and testing hypotheses. He understood the predator's methods, manipulation of perception, timing, and environment to induce unease and heighten alertness without direct confrontation. The maniac took pleasure in escalating the complexity. He orchestrated auditory and visual cues to maximize psychological impact. A faint echo of footsteps appeared in empty corridors, a shadow moved at the edge of Finch's vision, and subtle drafts caused doors to swing open or closed at carefully calculated moments. Each manipulation was precise, ensuring the detective was challenged at every turn. The predator's artistry lay in subtlety, each act of control an invisible brushstroke on a canvas of fear. Finch, following the trail of anomalies, traced the logic underlying the disturbances. He recognized a pattern. The predator relied on sequences of subtle manipulations to provoke psychological stress while remaining unseen. His mind raced to anticipate future actions, yet the maniac's creativity introduced variables that kept certainty just out of reach. Every step, every observation, every deduction was a test, and Finch understood that the predator's genius lay not just in the acts themselves but in the control exerted over perception and anticipation. The maniac, concealed in shadowed tunnels, continued to adjust elements in real time. Lights flickered with calculated irregularity, reflections in metal panels created illusions of movement, the faint sound of an approaching train echoed in areas where it could not have originated. Each intervention intensified the psychological tension, challenging Finch's analytical abilities and heightening his awareness. The predator's manipulations were subtle but cumulative, producing a sense of unease that penetrated the detective's mind without overt confrontation. By late night, Finch entered the station's central hall, where the most complex manipulations were concentrated. Shadows stretched across walls in impossible angles, sounds echoed in patterns that defied logic, and minor objects were displaced to create visual dissonance. Finch meticulously documented each anomaly, tracing the sequence of disturbances, reconstructing patterns, and hypothesizing potential motivations. The detective recognized that the predator's intent was psychological mastery rather than physical harm, that each manipulation was a deliberate probe to test perception, patience, and cognitive endurance. The maniac, observing from a hidden vantage, introduced additional complexities. A flickering light produced erratic shadows, an announcement played faintly, repeating a fragment of a past conversation, a door creaked open and closed in perfect timing with Finch's movements. Each action was calculated to maximize tension, disorient perception, and provoke subtle anxiety. Finch, aware of these manipulations, adjusted his strategy, focusing on observation, deduction, and mental reconstruction of the predator's plan. Yet the inherent unpredictability of the maniac ensured that certainty remained elusive. Outside the station, the city's streets were slick with rain, neon reflections glimmering across puddles. Finch emerged, mentally replaying the sequence of events within the tunnels. The predator, hidden from view, noted reactions, catalogued analytical patterns, and prepared for the next stage. The duel between detective and maniac remained invisible to the city, a silent contest of intellect, perception, and psychological mastery unfolding beneath the oblivious urban landscape. By the early morning hours, the duel reached a temporary pause. Finch, exhausted but resolute, returned to his apartment to review observations, catalog anomalies, and refine strategies. The Maniac, likewise, withdrew to observe and plan, analyzing the detective's responses and considering future manipulations. The city slept, unaware of the invisible game being played beneath its streets. Every shadow, every sound, every subtle environmental cue had become a participant in the ongoing psychological contest. And so, as dawn's first light crept through clouds, the Maniac at large had once again demonstrated mastery of manipulation, perception, and environmental control. Finch, determined but unaware of the full scope of the Predator's genius, prepared for the next day, knowing that escalation, complexity, and psychological ingenuity awaited. The city remained unwittingly complicit, its ordinary spaces transformed into stages of subtle terror, and the contest between intellect and madness continued with relentless, invisible intensity. The city had settled into a fragile calm, the streets glistening with lingering rain as the first hints of evening light faded behind the clouds. Finch, sitting hunched over his maps and notes, felt the weight of relentless observation pressing on him. Hours of tracking disturbances, reconstructing patterns, and deducing the Predator's movements had left him exhausted, yet his mind remained razor-sharp, operating with a precision honed by necessity. He understood that the Maniac's genius lay not in overt violence but in subtle manipulation, the ability to bend perception, and to craft psychological labyrinths from ordinary spaces. Every shadow, every sound, every shifted object was a calculated instrument in the Predator's invisible orchestra. Meanwhile, the Maniac had already selected his next arena, an upscale downtown hotel, a labyrinth of long hallways, mirrored surfaces, and silent elevators. The architecture was ideal, its reflective surfaces and symmetrical corridors provided infinite opportunities for manipulation, illusion, and disorientation. The Predator imagined the unsuspecting guests, the oblivious staff, and Finch, once again entering his carefully curated environment. The anticipation thrilled him, the intellectual and psychological challenge invigorating. Each corridor, each room, each reflective panel became a potential tool for crafting a tableau of fear, uncertainty, and controlled chaos. By late afternoon, Finch received word of subtle disturbances at the hotel. Guests had reported the sensation of being watched, lights flickered inconsistently, and objects appeared slightly out of place. He arrived cautiously, observing the polished lobby, noting the angle of each chair, the position of every decoration, and the faint hum of the air conditioning system. Small details, imperceptible to ordinary observers, were the key to deciphering the Predator's methods. Each anomaly was catalogued, measured, and mentally reconstructed. Finch's mind worked tirelessly, aware that each observation was crucial to anticipating the Maniac's next move. The Maniac moved with deliberate stealth, slipping through corridors, manipulating environmental elements with careful precision. A shadow shifted in a hallway where no one should have been, a reflection in a polished surface suggested movement behind Finch's back, an elevator hummed in a rhythm designed to unsettle without alarming. Each adjustment was a subtle instrument of psychological tension, orchestrated to provoke uncertainty, confusion, and heightened alertness. Finch noted these irregularities, recognizing the Predator's hand behind each nuance, yet full comprehension remained just out of reach. As night descended, the hotel transformed into a stage for the Maniac's artistry. Finch traced the sequence of disturbances, misaligned furniture, reflections creating visual illusions, soft sounds echoing from empty corridors. The detective's mind raced, cataloging patterns, testing hypotheses, and anticipating possible escalations. He understood the Maniac's methodology, manipulation of perception, timing, and environment to induce subtle but profound psychological impact. Yet the Predator's creativity ensured that every deduction was met with new variables, complications, and unexpected twists. The Maniac's pleasure increased with each intricate manipulation. Shadows were positioned to stretch unnaturally across walls, lights flickered in unpredictable patterns, doors creaked ever so slightly, implying movement where none existed. Every element was designed to challenge Finch's analytical abilities, to provoke cognitive dissonance, and to heighten the detective's mental engagement. The Predator's artistry lay in subtlety, ensuring that fear was generated without overt threat, anxiety was cultivated without violence, and perception itself became the battlefield. Inside the hotel, Finch began to recognize a complex choreography. Each anomaly was part of a sequence, a deliberate orchestration that tested his reasoning and observational skills. Minor objects had been shifted with precision, reflections created illusions of movement, auditory cues introduced uncertainty. Finch mentally reconstructed the sequence, mapping the flow of manipulations and hypothesizing potential motivations. He realized that the Predator's intent was not merely to unsettle but to craft an intellectual challenge, to engage in a silent duel of observation, deduction, and psychological endurance. The Maniac, hidden from view, adjusted elements in real time. Lights were dimmed at specific intervals, reflective surfaces angled to create disorienting effects, soft noises echoed unpredictably throughout the corridors. Each action was precise, ensuring maximum cognitive and emotional impact. Finch analyzed, catalogued, and predicted, aware that every step was anticipated, yet the unpredictability of creative genius left room for error and miscalculation. The duel between intellect and manipulation continued, invisible to the city, but intensely present to both predator and detective. By late evening, Finch entered the hotel's upper floors, where the most intricate disturbances were concentrated. Shadows danced at impossible angles, objects were subtly displaced, and sounds echoed in patterns that defied logical explanation. The detective meticulously documented each occurrence, reconstructing sequences, testing hypotheses, and mentally mapping the predator's methods. He recognized the sophistication of the Maniac's approach, mastery of perception, timing, and environmental control to generate psychological tension without direct confrontation. The Maniac, observing from a concealed vantage, introduced additional layers of manipulation. Shadows moved subtly at the edge of vision, reflections produced phantom movements, faint auditory cues suggested activity in empty corridors. Each intervention intensified tension, forcing Finch to question perception, to analyze, and to predict with limited information. The Predator's ingenuity lay in cumulative effect, small, precise manipulations combined to create disorientation, anxiety, and heightened awareness. Each observation, each deduction, each reaction became part of the evolving contest. Outside the hotel, the city's streets reflected neon lights in puddles of rain. Finch emerged mentally exhausted but unwavering, replaying sequences, cataloging anomalies, and refining theories. The Maniac, hidden in shadows, recorded responses, noting analytical patterns, and preparing for further escalation. The duel remained invisible to the city, an intellectual and psychological contest unfolding within ordinary spaces transformed into arenas of subtle terror. By the early hours of the morning, both detective and predator were locked in a relentless confrontation. Finch's mind worked tirelessly to decode the logic of disturbances. The Maniac refined manipulations, anticipated observations, and adjusted environmental cues. The city remained oblivious, its familiar spaces manipulated into stages of psychological artistry. Each shadow, sound, and object became a participant in the contest between intellect and madness, perception and manipulation. As dawn crept across the city, the Maniac at large had once again asserted control over perception, environment, and psychological influence. Finch, determined yet unaware of the full scope of the Predator's ingenuity, prepared for the next encounter. The stage was set, the sequence of maneuvers and countermaneuvers continuing with invisible, relentless intensity. The city remained an unwitting participant in a calculated spectacle of subtle terror, and the duel of intellect and psychological mastery persisted, promising further acts of ingenious manipulation and suspense. The city's night was deep and silent, a thick blanket of darkness cloaking streets, alleys, and buildings alike. Finch, exhausted from days of observation, mapping, and deduction, felt the mental strain pressing on him. Yet his determination remained undiminished. The Maniac's presence was like a pulse, subtle but insistent, a reminder that vigilance could not waver. He pored over his notes, tracing patterns of disturbances, reconstructing sequences, and preparing for the inevitable next act. Each small anomaly catalogued, each detail scrutinized, brought him closer to understanding the Predator's genius, yet complete comprehension remained tantalizingly out of reach. Meanwhile, the Maniac had already selected his next stage, an art museum renowned for its quiet halls, expansive galleries, and reflective surfaces. The space was ideal, offering controlled environments in which perception could be manipulated with subtlety and sophistication. He imagined the gallery-goers, moving between displays, unaware that their perceptions would be subtly guided and distorted. Each shadow, each reflection, each echo could be adjusted to heighten tension and provoke disorientation, and the thought exhilarated him. The museum was his canvas, perception itself the medium of artistry, and Finch the determined observer he sought to challenge. By late afternoon, Finch had received word of unusual activity at the museum, lights flickering in sequences inconsistent with maintenance schedules, minor anomalies in the arrangement of exhibits, and reports of an uneasy feeling among visitors. He arrived cautiously, observing the polished floors, expansive galleries, and mirrored displays. Each reflection, shadow, and angle was noted. Small irregularities, invisible to ordinary visitors, became crucial clues: a slightly skewed painting, a sculpture that seemed to cast shadows in unnatural ways, and the faint echo of footsteps in areas devoid of human presence. Finch's analytical mind catalogued each element with painstaking detail. The Maniac moved silently through the museum, adjusting elements in real time. A display case produced a faint creak, a curtain shifted slightly, as if by a breeze, shadows elongated, bending in ways that suggested impossible movement. Each subtle disturbance was designed to challenge perception without alerting visitors or staff. Finch noticed these irregularities, cataloguing, reconstructing, and hypothesizing, but the precision and unpredictability of the Maniac's design made certainty elusive. The detective understood that he was confronting a mind that valued subtlety and control over overt force. As evening deepened, the museum transformed into a theater of subtle psychological tension. Finch navigated the galleries, tracing sequences of anomalies, reflections producing phantom movements, minor objects slightly displaced, sounds echoing unexpectedly. Each incident was carefully orchestrated, testing his analytical skills and challenging assumptions. Finch recognized the Maniac's methodology, an intricate combination of environmental manipulation, psychological provocation, and meticulous timing. The Predator's artistry lay in subtlety, making observation itself a cognitive challenge. The Maniac's pleasure intensified as he escalated complexity. Shadows moved at imperceptible angles, lights flickered unpredictably, and soft, dissonant sounds echoed throughout the halls. Each element was calculated to heighten cognitive tension, disorientation, and emotional alertness. Finch analyzed, documented, and reconstructed patterns, attempting to anticipate future interventions. Yet the Predator's adaptability ensured that every deduction encountered new variables, surprises, and misdirections. Each step became part of a silent, cerebral contest, a duel of intellect and psychological mastery. Within the museum, Finch began to perceive the choreography of disturbances. Every movement, every anomaly, every subtle cue was part of a pattern designed to provoke thought, uncertainty, and heightened perception. He mapped sequences, tested hypotheses, and reconstructed potential motives. The detective realized the Predator's intent, not to cause physical harm but to exert control over perception, to manipulate cognition, and to challenge intellectual faculties. Each observation, each deduction, became part of a psychological dialogue, subtle, invisible, and profoundly demanding. The Maniac, concealed in shadows among the galleries, introduced additional layers of manipulation. A flickering light created phantom shapes, reflections in polished surfaces suggested movement, auditory cues, soft whispers, distant footsteps, provoked anxiety without revealing their origin. Each intervention intensified the contest between observation and perception. Finch's analytical mind, though precise and meticulous, encountered the unpredictability of human perception shaped by the Predator's ingenuity. The duel of intellect and manipulation deepened, invisible to all except the participants. By late evening, Finch entered the museum's central atrium, where the most intricate disturbances were concentrated. Shadows fell in impossible alignments, minor objects were displaced with precision, and the interplay of light and reflection created disorienting visual illusions. Finch meticulously documented each anomaly, reconstructing sequences and testing hypotheses. He understood the sophistication of the Maniac's approach, mastery of environment, perception, and timing to provoke psychological tension without direct confrontation. Each disturbance was deliberate, subtle, and profoundly effective. Outside, the city streets glimmered under lamplight, reflecting the rain from earlier in the day. Finch departed, mentally replaying the museum's sequence of events, cataloging anomalies, and refining strategies. The Maniac, observing from hidden vantage points, recorded responses, noting analytical patterns and preparing for future manipulations. The duel remained invisible to the city, an intellectual and psychological contest unfolding in ordinary spaces transformed into arenas of subtle terror. By the early hours of the morning, both detective and predator were engaged in relentless, unseen confrontation. Finch's mind worked tirelessly to decode the logic of disturbances, while the maniac refined interventions, anticipated deductions, and adjusted environmental cues. The city remained oblivious, its familiar spaces serving as the backdrop for subtle terror and the contest of intellect versus manipulation. Every shadow, sound, and reflection became a participant in the evolving psychological duel. And so, as dawn crept across the cityscape, the maniac at large had once again demonstrated mastery over perception, environment, and subtle terror. Finch, determined but unaware of the predator's full capabilities, prepared for the next encounter. The stage was set, sequences of maneuvers and countermaneuvers were in motion, and the city remained an unwitting participant in a meticulously orchestrated spectacle of fear and psychological artistry. The contest between intellect and madness, observation and manipulation, continued with relentless, invisible intensity. The city was cloaked in a fog that muffled sound and distorted familiar shapes, turning streetlights into hazy halos and buildings into looming silhouettes. Finch felt the exhaustion of days and nights of observation pressing down on him, but there was no room for surrender. He had tracked disturbances through libraries, amusement parks, subway stations, and museums, and he knew the maniac's next act would test every skill, every intuition he possessed. Coffee stained his fingers, maps were strewn across the floor, and his eyes burned with fatigue, but he remained relentless, driven by a need to confront the genius behind the chaos. The maniac, observing from a rooftop overlooking the city's central plaza, had chosen his final arena, the annual street fair, an event teeming with movement, sound, and unsuspecting participants. It was the perfect environment for subtle manipulation. Every vendor's stall, every string of lights, every wandering patron presented a variable to be controlled, redirected, or distorted. The predator's mind raced with possibilities, flickering shadows cast by carnival rides, reflective surfaces that could create phantom images, and sequences of auditory cues timed to provoke unease. He was thrilled by the complexity, the challenge, and the orchestration of fear without overt threat. By late afternoon, Finch had received reports of unusual occurrences at the fair, flickering lights on rides that should have been off, vendors reporting inexplicable shadows in their booths, and multiple visitors claiming the sensation of being followed or watched. Finch arrived cautiously, noting the minutiae that others would dismiss. Each displaced object, each skewed sign, each shadow that seemed too long or too sharp was catalogued meticulously. The detective's mind raced, piecing together patterns, anticipating manipulation, and preparing to counter the predator's next move. The maniac moved among the crowd, unseen, adjusting variables with precision. A balloon shifted to obscure a line of sight, a metallic reflection produced a phantom figure, the sound of distant laughter echoed in ways that implied movement where none existed. Each adjustment was subtle yet cumulatively disorienting. Finch noticed these irregularities, analyzing the sequences and reconstructing the manipulations, but he knew the full orchestration was beyond simple observation. The predator's artistry lay in subtlety, timing, and the orchestration of perception itself. As evening fell, the fair became a labyrinth of shadows and flickering lights. Finch moved deliberately, documenting anomalies, a carousel spinning briefly without power, the pattern of shadows on the ground, and echoes that contradicted apparent sources. He traced sequences, hypothesized potential manipulations, and anticipated future disturbances. Yet the maniac's unpredictability made full comprehension impossible. Each calculated irregularity tested Finch's deductive abilities, challenged his perception, and forced him to remain hypervigilant. The maniac's satisfaction grew with each escalation. He introduced increasingly intricate manipulations, lights flickered in sequences that produced disorienting illusions, shadows moved in ways that contradicted logic, faint sounds suggested activity where none existed. Each intervention heightened tension, forcing Finch to analyze, anticipate, and question the reliability of his senses. The predator's skill was evident in the orchestration of subtle fear, creating psychological complexity without physical confrontation. Within the fair, Finch began to perceive the underlying choreography. Each displaced object, each flicker of light, each auditory cue was part of a sequence designed to test perception and analytical skill. He mapped sequences meticulously, tracing the predator's logic and predicting potential escalations. Finch recognized the intent, mastery of the environment to provoke cognitive tension and psychological engagement. The maniac was not seeking mere chaos, he was crafting a subtle, intricate battle of intellect and perception. The Predator, concealed in the shadows, adjusted elements in real time. A reflective surface produced phantom movement, a drifting paper fluttered in ways that suggested a presence, a string of lights dimmed momentarily to distort perception. Each action was precise, calculated to increase cognitive tension, provoke uncertainty, and challenge Finch's deductive reasoning. The duel of intellect and manipulation intensified, invisible to the fair's patrons yet profoundly present for the detective and Predator. By nightfall, Finch reached the center of the plaza where the most complex disturbances converged. Lights flickered, shadows danced at impossible angles, and auditory cues created illusions of motion and presence. Finch meticulously catalogued each anomaly, reconstructed sequences, and tested hypotheses. He understood the sophistication of the Maniac's methods, mastery over perception, timing, and environmental control to generate psychological tension without overt confrontation. Each observation, each deduction, was a step in the silent duel that had been unfolding across the city. The Maniac, hidden among the crowd, orchestrated final adjustments. Shadows stretched unnaturally, reflections suggested figures where none existed, and sounds echoed with deceptive timing. Each subtle intervention intensified the psychological landscape, challenging Finch to perceive, interpret, and respond accurately. The Predator's artistry was in cumulative effect, small, precise manipulations combined to create a complex web of anxiety, perception, and heightened awareness. Each reaction from Finch informed the next adjustment, creating a dynamic, evolving contest. Outside, the city streets reflected neon lights and street lamps, rain-slick surfaces amplifying the disorientation. Finch departed from the fair temporarily, mentally replaying sequences, cataloging anomalies, and refining strategies for engagement. The Maniac observed from afar, recording responses, noting patterns of analysis, and preparing for continued manipulation. The duel remained unseen by the city, an invisible contest of intellect, observation, and psychological skill. By the early hours of the morning, both detective and Predator were entrenched in a relentless confrontation. Finch's mind worked tirelessly to decode sequences of disturbances. The Maniac refined interventions, adjusted environmental cues, and anticipated deductions. The city remained oblivious, ordinary spaces transformed into stages of psychological artistry, subtle terror, and intellectual challenge. Every shadow, sound, and reflection became a participant in a contest between intellect and manipulation, observation and perception. Finally, Finch paused, eyes scanning the empty streets and darkened plazas. He realized that the Maniac's genius lay not in violence but in control, in the orchestration of perception, and in the challenge of intellect. The Predator had manipulated environments, time, and observation with a precision that demanded respect. Finch understood that the duel would continue, as long as the city remained a stage, as long as perception could be challenged, and as long as the Maniac at large walked unseen among its shadows. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the city in muted light, Finch allowed himself a moment of reflection. Exhausted but resolute, he knew the contest had reached a pivotal point. The Maniac's mastery of subtle terror, manipulation, and observation had been displayed across libraries, amusement parks, subway stations, museums, and street fairs. Yet the detective's intellect, vigilance, and analytical prowess had kept pace, decoding sequences, anticipating manipulations, and engaging in a cerebral duel that had transformed ordinary spaces into arenas of psychological confrontation. The city stirred to life unaware, oblivious to the battles that had unfolded in the shadows. Finch, determined and vigilant, prepared for the next encounter, fully aware that escalation, ingenuity, and psychological artistry would continue. The Maniac, at large, had demonstrated a mastery of perception, environment, and manipulation that defied simple comprehension. The duel between intellect and madness, observation, and manipulation, continued, promising further challenges, intricate psychological displays, and a subtle, invisible spectacle that only the detective and Predator truly understood. And so, as the first commuters stepped into the streets, and the city began its day, the Maniac at large remained unchallenged in his freedom, yet continually tested by the relentless pursuit of Finch. The invisible contest persisted, an intricate ballet of perception, intellect, and psychological control, leaving a trail of subtle terror, intricate manipulations, and unobserved genius in its wake. The duel, far from over, had reached its crescendo, leaving both hunter and prey locked in a perpetual struggle across the ordinary spaces of the unsuspecting city.